Alrighty, y'all. G'day, gone. We're taking a look at some interesting stuff coming out of Australia, as always, but this time it's going to be from a data perspective. Maps, data, that kind of thing. These are some of my favorites. Let's take a look. Alrighty, so first up, we have expected years of schooling within each country. Anyone know why Australia is so far ahead of the curve on this one? So if you actually take a look, here is the map, of course. Expected years of schooling. So the orange, reddish, brown colors would be less years expected. Light blue would be pretty average or mid, 15 to 17.99 years. And that accounts for, I would say a lot of countries. That ice blue, Northern Europe, getting pretty competitive there with 18 to 21 years. But 21 plus looks to me on this map as the most years expected schooling in a league of their own. We have Australia, New Zealand close behind, but yeah, Australia with the only green, unless I'm missing one. So what do you guys think about that? That's pretty interesting. This is a map from a couple years ago. Looks to be like everyone in Australia getting bachelor's and master's degrees, it's like normal. Like everybody's getting it. Now, some people bring up some good points. Does Australia count preschool or pre-K? A lot of the time when you find some big national outlier, it's because someone didn't adjust for local data collection. And that very well might be the case here. I'm pretty sure, give credit where it's due. I think Australia probably, if this is a data mistake, which we don't even know if it is, but if it was, I have heard always good things about Australia and Australia education. So I think it would still hold true as an impressive institution regardless. As an Australian, I'm curious how they measure expected. If I included every bit of schooling I've done, 2 years of preschool, 13 years of mandatory schooling, so that's 15. 3 years for a bachelor, that's 18. 1 year for a random diploma paid for by my job, that's 19. And 2 years for a master's, that's 21. I get 21 years, which is still below the expected years of schooling at 21.1, technically, right? I found data from Universities Australia that lumps students into 4, 6, and 9-year cohorts, depending on how long they take to finish their degree from the initial enrollment. I wonder if that's playing into it. A rough glance shows that most students fall into the 6 years cohort. Yeah, it might. It just might be a data error, which makes this a little less exciting, but I thought I'd throw it in there, see if you guys can sort this out. Now, of course, I love data and maps, and let's combine them. Now, we've seen population maps of Australia before. I'm sure you've seen them as well. They're always interesting because you have this massive, iconic-looking country, right, when you see it on the map. But, of course, when you look at the population, it looks freakishly empty. It's all concentrated right in here with maybe a blip up here and a blip over here. Now, this one is not that map, but rather half the population. And it looks even emptier. So, yeah, this is just half the population, approximately 11 million people, over 3,000 suburbs. Now, of course, this does go back to the 2011 census. I know population has gone up, I'm sure, since then. But, yeah, use your imagination here. That is freakishly empty for a country, again, so famous. People on any corner of the earth might know and have probably heard of Australia. But when you look at the country and its people, it's like, what? It's so weird to see. One of the most fascinating things you could ever bring up with Australia is maps like this. I've flown Singapore to Melbourne a few times, so crossing the northwest of the continent to the southeast for like 3 hours on that route in a plane, by the way. Every time you look out the window randomly, you see nothing. No towns, no farms, no roads, nothing. That's crazy. Yeah, it is just so weird to see. Yep, don't go inland. That thing will kill you. Alrighty, I threw this in there because this is kind of fascinating, and also because, hey, I'm an honest guy. I feel like kind of an idiot trying to read this. I'm a little confused. This is an age distribution chart of parents of registered births during the year 2022 in Australia. So we have the left age of father, the bottom row age of mother, and then you have all this going on. And usually I love charts and graphs, and usually I know how to read them. For some reason, I'm like psyching myself out on this one. I can't really fathom what's going on. So, yeah, I'm going to leave this here for you guys. If you would like to, kind of look at it, there's a whole view of it. It looks like, I think the average age of fathers who gave birth, was around 30, 31. And I think the same for mothers. Is that what I'm gathering here, being the red squares having the most occurrences? But then of course there's outliers, like some births really early, 16 years old, or some really late, 48 to 50 years old. I think that's what we're reading here. But honestly, I'm being honest, I am a little confused because the dotted lines are throwing me off. But yeah, I'm going to leave this here for you guys. So there you go. I thought it was interesting nonetheless. Area of land burnt in Australia compared to the size of Ireland. Holy smokes. Literally, that is freaky. We all know how bad bushfires, wildfires, that kind of thing can be at various places on Earth in the last couple decades, but of course in Australia, probably leading the charge for devastation when it comes to fires. Damn, that really puts it into perspective. This is definitely great data just for the sake of learning how bad some disasters can be. That is literally burnt land. And it's the size, almost the size of another famous country. Yikes. Interesting data, sure. Happy data, no, definitely not. This is a shaded relief map rendered in 3D. I always love these. These are so cool when you zoom in on these. Look at that. Look at the detail. These are really fun, right? I think they're awesome. I need to buy one of these for a couple different places. They're just so cool. I love the way they look. And of course, Australia comes in looking awesome, right? I mean, the colors, of course, the different plains and mountain ranges. And look at this, right? It literally looks like a paint. What's the word I'm looking for here? Like a paint brush stroke. That's the word I'm looking for. The Nullarbor Plain, I think that's what this is. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, that looks so iconic there because you can see it, right? It's so flat. I did think when you're driving across that looks like it's going to take a hell of a long time. That's got to be one of the hardest drives ever, even though you're pretty much driving in a straight line on flat terrain. You don't have to worry about canyon drives and canyon curves and mountain roads and whatever. It's dangerous because it's so flat and so boring. But it's pretty iconic. Also, I love seeing this in here. Of course, the coastal ranges look beautiful, and that reddish orangish color that's so iconic. While we're at it, we might as well look at some other places. This is, of course, my home. I do love America, the U.S., how it looks. Actually, North America as a whole, Canada and Mexico, are equally beautiful. And again, these maps make for cool, I'm kind of in the plains here. Wisconsin and parts of Iowa and Minnesota are pretty cool, have some cliffs and some big hills, Michigan too. But yeah, Illinois is pretty plain with the exception of the northern tip, and the southern part of the state can get pretty crazy as well. But yeah, you have the Ozarks, you have the Appalachian area here. The mountains out west are just incredible. And as you can see, they're everywhere. It's nuts. I love how Africa looks as well. Very iconic. Look at the very intimidating sandy desert look to the northern whole third of the continent. And of course, the rugged interior and coastal mountains as well. Very impressive. Also, Europe, beautiful, very iconic as well, especially when you think of the coastal, the lines on the map, right? The shape of it. Lots of mountain ranges and greenery, and a surprising lack of deserts like we saw basically everywhere else. For the people in North America, a visualization of land burnt in Australia and the area of smoke coverage. Okay, so another one of these. This works perfect for me because I can really visualize it. I think this is the area burnt, which obviously doesn't look quite as big when it's overlaid on the U.S. versus Ireland, but still big. They have it set right here. It covers quite a bit of Colorado into New Mexico. That's the land burnt. But what really gets me is that smoke coverage. That is absolutely insane. That if that fire happened right here, the smoke would go all the way down into Mexico, over to California, all the way over here to Illinois, up to literally the Canadian border, and everywhere in between. That is insane. Remember, the U.S. is huge. The 48 states right here are huge, and this covers half of it. It's insane. Google searches for the word summer peak at different times of the year. Gee, I wonder why. We all know why, of course. You're in the southern hemisphere, we're in the northern, but it is pretty funny seeing that, right? Proof that different hemispheres exist right here. I will say it's interesting how the U.S. one is a little more dramatic, like rise up and then a fall, whereas the Australia one's a little more gradual. I wonder what that's about. Here's the vegetation index, NDVI, of Australia in 2019, since you all loved Africa so much. Okay, so someone must have made this for Africa. This is cool. Okay, so here's January. Look at that. That is really fascinating. Look at it. Really green up here, down there. Wow, that is cool. I like maps like that. Now, this is data. I think that should be standard. I've said this before, I think recently and in many other videos. Australian tax returns showing where taxes are spent, 23 and 24. And look at that. I mean, this gives a true itemized breakdown with dollar amounts and percentages. I think that is so cool. That is a win for Australia. And no, of course not that we don't get this here in the U.S. An itemized breakdown. We pay a bunch of taxes, and it feels like it goes to nothing. And they don't show you, so it might go to nothing. Now, this is interesting. This is the average monthly net salary in the 20 largest cities in the USA, the UK, Canada, and Australia. Now, this is in U.S. dollars. San Francisco coming in way, way in front. It's actually kind of crazy with $8,000 a month. Seattle, New York City, Dallas, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Boston, and Chicago, and Houston rounding out the rest. And so these are all U.S. So I do find that a little shocking. I know typically, contrary to some people's belief, you can make a lot of money in the U.S. Unfortunately, there's other costs and things I won't go into. It doesn't necessarily mean it goes the furthest, but you can make a lot here at a lot of different jobs, especially in big cities. Now, of course, living in San Francisco and Seattle, those are the two most expensive places in the U.S. to live. So they have to make a lot, but they might be struggling still. It just depends on who you are and how much you're actually making. But the first non-U.S. city we see is Sydney, comes in right behind Houston at just, we'll round up to $5,000 a month. Then some other notable mentions, London at $4,300 a month, Toronto at $3,797, and Melbourne just under Miami. Now, of course, people bring up some good points, like how do people afford to live in places like Sydney? Something I've always asked on this channel. Housing markets are horrible, and the salary is comparatively horrible as well. Sydney is similar to San Fran when it comes to median house prices, over $1 million, but on par with Atlanta, which was towards the bottom, their net salary. And answer how it works in Toronto. Typically, it's one of four things. People that are grandfathered in, so they either bought their house before the cost of living boom or got into a rent-controlled apartment before the boom. Dual incomes, average income times 2 gets you a studio or one bedroom without too much struggle. That's a good point as well, assuming you're not on your own. Single people are just spending upwards of 70% of the take-home on rent. Holy smokes, that's a freaky thought. Multiple people cramming into apartments and basements just to split the rent at this point. And yeah, so these are all good points. Overall, long term, it's not a healthy thing. So, I respect people of all walks of life, but I'm not a big city person. I like, from the outside perspective, cities are fun. I like how they're all different. I like skylines and stuff. Like, cities are cool, but I'm more of a countryside guy or living outside of the city. If you want to enjoy the city, you drive into it and enjoy it. But I've never understood I want to pay, $10,000 a month for an apartment in New York City. I just don't understand it. Right. And data like this, seeing the cost of living and what they make, I just don't know how people do it. If you do, more power to you. The way I see it for Sydney, Australia, I know that's somewhere I want to go. That's somewhere I've learned a lot about. It's somewhere that looks beautiful, and it's one of the most famous cities in the world for a reason. It's an awesome place. But the way I see it is I would rather live, in my head at least, I'd rather, if possible, live 45, 50 minutes outside of the city, maybe even up to an hour outside the city. Hopefully it would be a lot cheaper and you have some more room, maybe a house with a little bit of property to play with. You're not in the city, you're not right on the coast, you can't, you don't see the big skyline every day, but if you need it, you can drive into the city and enjoy it or go to the places you need to go. But I'd gladly save some money and be outside of it. That's just how I am. But yeah, it is just crazy how expensive some big cities are. Price of cigarettes in Australia compared to other items in 2020. Look at that. One pack of Marlboro Golds, $50 or 50 Australian dollars. US dollars 35. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I think they're more expensive here too than they've ever been. I don't know because I don't smoke, but I want to say that those golds would be, I don't know, maybe 15, $12 or $15 US here, maybe higher. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's crazy how much other things you could get for that. That's an expensive hobby. No judgment here. If you buy cigarettes a lot, you do you. But damn, that's expensive, right? Ouch. Look at all these things you could buy instead. I think I'll take the TimTams for $3.50. Full-time Australian occupation salaries 2020. This is in Australian dollars, by the way. Australian Prime Minister #1. Oh, I'm not surprised. That politicians always do well, don't they? My favorite part is when it shows their salary, but then their net worth is like, 50 million. Someone want to explain that to me? Well, at least that's how it works here in the U.S., but yeah, surgeons up there. I think these would be pretty similar. Like some would be similar here in the U.S. But yeah, that's kind of thought I'd show that. There is tons and tons I could look at here. I'm actually going to cut it there. I thought these were pretty fun, pretty interesting as well. Data and maps kind of combined is always cool, and there's a lot to learn from them. And sometimes at the same time, they're not exactly applicable to day-to-day life. That's why, again, I think they're informative. It's also fun to see how it differs from real-life experience as well. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope your day is going well. I appreciate you watching. I can't wait to see your comments on this one. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Catch you later.